Flores was born with cerebral palsy. Although her condition has affected her mobility, it has never affected her will and determination to make a difference in the world. Through many of life's challenges and obstacles, she has discovered a passion for writing. Her goal in life is to share her stories with the world, and in doing so, help others with disabilities realize that they too have the potential to make their dreams come true.
All right. So, can you tell us a little bit about your story to our community?
Well, I'm Tylia Flores. I am a 25-year-old born with cerebral palsy. I am a disability activist, author, and radio show personality.
Wow, that is amazing. You definitely have a lot going for you.
No,
And when did you decide that you really wanted to be a disability advocate, start writing, do this podcast? Was there a particular time that you
yes,
had this aha moment?
yes, and it all starts off with a tragedy. 3 years prior to this, my best friend, who had cerebral palsy, he passed away from cancer. And in order for me to channel my grief, I wrote James Ticking Time Bomb. That was the inspiration behind it. Then, after that was published at 16, I decided that I wanted to go into disability advocacy and cerebral palsy because there's a lot of misconceptions that I wanted to debunk.
Right. Oh,
So,
absolutely.
with that being said, I decided to take my grief and what I learned from that and use it as a tool to turn the negative situation into something positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like what Different Enable, is all about, shedding light onto the positives and not the negatives. I'm sorry to hear about your friend who passed away. But it's nice to hear that you, quote unquote, learned something that now you turned something into a positive. I mean, no one can cure cancer, but
Yeah, no,
it's yeah, no, it's amazing. So yeah, you're doing amazing work. So to get into your work, can you tell us a little bit more about um, I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about your work and your career to date?
okay, so Stomping on CP was founded when I was a senior in high school, and as I said, I wanted to take my writing and turn it into something positive because I had used it to cope with a tragedy. So I started this advocacy group called Stomping on Cerebral Palsy, and I advocate for those with CP, and that is our mission. My mission in the near future is to go overseas and talk about what happens in other countries like in Cape Coral. So
Wow. And how do you like that? You must love it.
I love it. It's amazing to be an advocate for those with cerebral palsy because, as I say, cerebral palsy is an adventure. And if I could teach somebody else how to embrace the journey and how to embrace the wheels or the crutches, then I'm doing my job.
Of course. Absolutely. And so you had mentioned that you do have a podcast called Stomping on Cerebral Palsy with Tyla. I love the title. And it's about raising awareness on CP. So can you tell us what was the inspiration to start this podcast?
Well, the inspiration to start this podcast, I was already into writing, right? So I had a radio station in Virginia approach me and they're like, "Well, we like what you do with your writing. Could you put that into a form of a 15-minute podcast?" And I said, "Sure." And I fell in love with the broadcasting from there. From the radio station in Virginia, I went to Asheville FM, which is a bigger platform, and now I'm a DJ on Asheville FM.
Wow, that's amazing. And do you have any goals for the future with your podcast? I mean, I know we're in the pandemic, which makes things difficult.
My goal for the future with the podcast is to expand it and to give other radio personalities with disabilities the opportunity to share their voices too. So mainly my goal is to start my own podcast radio station and
Oh,
have it
wow.
aired globally.
That's amazing.
so that I
And so when do you think you'll be able to start that?
probably within the next 2 years, because I still have to get funding and I still have to get a program running, but I know I can do it. So
That's amazing. I'm super excited to see where things go with you. It's really, really exciting. You should be proud of what you're overcoming and what you're doing
thank you so
with
much.
your work. So what topics do you want to explore that you have not already? And we spoke a little bit about this, but specifically in the future
Well,
with podcasts.
I know this is like a big controversy, but how police officers interact with disabled people, because
Okay.
we're in a time where interaction with police officers and disabled people aren't that good. I mean, look at Matthew Russian, look at Sandra Bland, who also had a disability. Look at all these people of color that are going through such a hard time, and people are fearful, so I
Well, of
wanted to.
course, a lot of people are fearful. It's unfortunate. But within time, hopefully things will improve.
like
And you're paving the way for that, which is great.
like last summer, I was a part of a panel with the Hearing Project, and I was put in the Manhattan Times because I did a panel with Ashley Jacobson and other great advocates, Crystal Atmosphere, on this amazing topic that we need to touch base on as a disability community, because we're going to have to face police officers every day, you
Mhm.
know, but we just have the dilemma of being disabled and being women of color. So
Absolutely.
I hope
Um,
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. So what does being a part of the cerebral palsy community mean to you?
It means the world to me. Like, I love my condition. I think my condition makes me beautiful, and it means the world to me that I'm able to come together and spread the message of equality, acceptance, and inclusion, because we don't get a lot of that in the cerebral palsy community. We don't get a lot of awareness about it, like, per se, autism. They get so much awareness, but come the month of March, we don't get any, and we constantly have to fight. So for me, it means being able to speak out and spread awareness for cerebral palsy, but also promote other people and celebrate our talents versus what the doctors say, which they focus on our weaknesses.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. So do you have an advocacy related moment that means a lot to you?
yeah, I definitely do. This summer, I was a part of a documentary that you could find on YouTube through this amazing young woman who has a spinal cord injury. Her name's Priya Ray, and she does a lot of advocacy work. And she asked me to be a part of this documentary called Disability on the Spectrum. And basically, it follows me and a bunch of my other friends that had to learn how to cope with being in this pandemic and how we advocated through that, you know.
Right.
So
Well, the pandemic's been really, really tough. And it's not just tough on, people like us, but it's tough on a lot of other people.
agreed. And
Yeah.
that's why I decided to take fourth in this project. I also have another moment where I got to be a part of the exclusion panel for the 30th anniversary of the ADA, and I recited my poem Why, which you could find on my YouTube channel. And after I was done reciting the poem, a man comes up to me and he said, my father's 74 years old, and you just spoke for him, and he has cerebral palsy, so I thank you a ton.
Right. No,
So,
of course.
so I got very emotional.
Yeah, no, I mean, this work is really important. And I think with the pandemic, like I said, I mean, everyone's having challenges. And, some people may be not as affected as others. But, it's something that, you and me and the rest of the world that have a disability are really, improving to make better.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. As you stated, so that more books about disabilities need to be published. What is the reasoning behind this, and
Oh,
why do you believe this?
I could tell you the exact reason behind it because I believe the more and more authors we have with disabilities that are sharing their experiences and are sharing their stories is one step closer to acceptance, understanding, equality, and exclusion for all people with disabilities.
Right. No, no, no,
Right.
no. Okay.
That's why I wrote that article because I have this strong belief that literature can inspire people to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was inspired by Nicholas Sparks.
Mm-hmm.
He's my idol. He's one of my idols. And that's why I picked up a book and I started to write, reading A Walk to Remember, where Jamie Sullivan has leukemia, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Book Wonder.
Yeah.
Incredible. So.
Right. No, 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 absolutely. And do you find that there are more books about disabilities coming out, or
Yeah,
do you
I
think
feel
there needs to be even more?
I feel like now there's more books coming out, but there needs to be even more. Like I just got done reading Just Roll With It by Jamie Summers, and that was a phenomenal. She described CP very well,
Yeah,
and I was proud
absolutely.
of her for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no. So what does it mean to you to tell our stories?
What it means to me to tell our stories is that everybody's story is different. We can't judge the book by its cover. And it just shows that we're all full of diversity and we all have different talents. And it just means the world to me, the absolute world to me to hear other people's stories because that's why I decided to get into advocacy. It wasn't for the likes, it wasn't for TikTok fame. It was so that I could help other people expand
Yeah,
their horizon.
right. No, I mean, absolutely. And this is, expanding and knowledge and, raising awareness is the first key to doing any type of improvement or making any type of progress.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So, for anyone with a disability who is considering making their career to be a writer or writing part of their career, what advice would you give them?
Okay, and I say this in every interview. Be raw and be truthful. Always speak your truth. Never hide the truth. Always tell your true story. Always share the up, downs, and the lows.
Mm-hmm.
Because the obstacles are the things that makes the stories greater. Like if you ever heard this song by AJR, 100 Bad Days,
No, I haven't heard of it.
I think you should listen to that song. And the reason why I'm referencing that song is because the band talks about how 100 bad things that happen to them make the best stories in order for them to inspire other people. Because obstacles inspire other people, and how you overcome them inspire other people. So that's what I would say.
I think that's great advice.
Thank you.
Really good advice. So, in your poem, Climb, these lines really stand out. In our world that isn't made for me, but I still try to climb no matter what's in front of me. Can you share about writing Climb?
Oh
And
yeah, I can share that because that's a very interesting. I wrote that on a day where I was laying in bed in
okay.
severe pain because CP decided it wanted to have its party. And instead of me getting angry and throwing stuff, I decided to write down my emotions and channel it there. And when I wrote that line, I was crying because I feel like, oh, yes, I have cerebral palsy, I am verbal, I do know what goes on, but sometimes I feel like society isn't made for me. sometimes I feel trapped within my own body because of the CP and because of the lack of awareness surrounding it. But I always still try to remain positive and share my story because that's the best thing I could do.
Right. And so what do you do when you feel down and, not necessarily included because there's a lack of CP, and the struggles that CP has, caused you? I mean, is there anything that you do to kind of pep you up? I mean, we all have bad days, but, you know, to feel, non-inclusive or included and, kind of I want to say, a bystander from the rest. That must be difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult, but I do exactly what I'm doing right now. I either do speaking engagements and I write.
Yeah. No, and writing is very therapeutic. I'm actually writing a book. I've been taking some time off from it and now I'm getting back onto it in about a
Awesome.
week.
Let me know when
But
it's so I can buy a copy.
what? I'm sorry.
Let me know when it's out so I can buy a copy.
Oh yeah, no, I will. It's not going to be out for a while, but because what I have to do is with different enable, I have to kind of stop when I'm really busy and then start again when I'm have a more free moment, and
Yes, absolutely.
it can be tricky. So, but it's all good. I
It's
mean, but
all
yeah, no, I'll let you know for sure when it comes out.
yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you also wrote a piece for Thought Catalog entitled 10 Ways to Say I Love You Without Actually Saying It. Can you tell us a little bit about this poem
Okay,
or piece?
this piece was inspired by an ex that I had that wasn't really showing me the right things. So I just wrote the piece and I gave it to him and said, "Here, this is exactly what I want you to do." Turns out he didn't wind up doing it, unfortunately. So I ended that chapter. That's okay. Me and him are real good friends to this day, and I thank him for the inspiration behind that piece because I feel like that piece is very beneficial to a lot of people because we all have different love languages.
Absolutely, absolutely. And have you found that, despite having CP or other people having disabilities, that you have been able to find love of any sort, or
Yeah.
anyone who finds love of any sort? I mean, we're living in a weird world, but,
Oh,
what have you seen to be the challenges, if anything?
for me, I seem to be the type that always gets into the relationships where the parents are very ableist. As far as if I'm with an able-bodied person, let's say for example my partner is able-bodied. Well, the parents look at me and they say, "Well, what does she want you to do? Be a caregiver?"
No,
And
I understand. I understand.
that was one of the reasons why I went into advocacy regarding disabilities in dating because there's so much stigma surrounding it. But luckily, now I'm in a relationship where the parents are not ableist and he has the same disability I do, and they're able to understand us and our needs, and they're very supportive. So,
That's wonderful. Well, congrats. How long have you guys been dating?
about since August.
Oh, okay. So it's been about 6, 7 months.
Yeah, 6, 7 months, and we just made it Facebook official in January. Because I'm not the type of person that just wants to make it Facebook official if I'm not sure. So I wanted to take the time out, get to know him as a person, and then
Yeah,
just
well, I'll tell you something. I feel the exact same way, and crazy enough because it is the pandemic, but it seems like you met your boyfriend in the pandemic as well, or you started dating obviously in the pandemic. But I did have a boyfriend for a short period of time. In the end, it wasn't going to work out, which I didn't realize, and it didn't need to be realized within 2 months of dating. But it happened very fast, and about a month into us dating, because we saw each other quite a lot, like a few times a week. Um, he had asked me to be exclusive, and I knew that I wanted to be exclusive with him. And I felt very comfortable putting it on Facebook. And so I did. I just said I put it in a relationship. I made it completely official. And then the sad part is that like 3 weeks late, no, maybe like a month later, I should say, because it was about 2 months. He then said, I'm not so sure. I'm like into having a relationship. I have a lot going on. And it's true, he had a lot going on, and it's totally fine because in the end it wasn't going to work out. But he was of a different religion. And there were actually some issues, specifically with intimacy on his end, that still needed to be figured out. And anyways, to make a long story short, it didn't work out. It's totally fine. But I understand about being official on Facebook, or just being official on Instagram, or any social media.
I have that one rule because, one, I'm a public figure too. So, and the people that I've dated in the past prior to my boyfriend, they know that. I'm like, listen, I'm a public figure. So if we make it Facebook official, just know that all my stompers are going to know about you, everybody. And are you okay with that? Because, from what you Googled, my love life hasn't been very private because it just can't be in my
So,
eyes.
right. So what tips or advice would you give to others on relationships and dating?
One thing I always say, fall in love with yourself first, because if you don't, how do you expect others to fall in love with you? 2, build a friendship first. Just don't go rushing into it. And 3, embrace the journey and embrace the life lessons that the relationship's going to teach you. Because
Great advice.
every relationship that I've been in, I've been grateful for because it taught me something.
Absolutely. Each relationship does teach you something, and it's a process. And until you find the right person, and I'm not talking about you, but I just mean somebody, anyone in general, you learn with each experience or relationship.
Yeah, you learn and you prosper, and I have no ill will toward my past relationships. I'm grateful for each and every one of them, and I thank them for being a part of my story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what do you wish people knew or understood about having a disability?
What do I wish people knew is that we are not what our diagnosis says, and we could go above and beyond and achieve many, many goals. Despite the obstacle courses that we have to wheel through or run through or just be around, that's part of life. Everybody's going to have a journey, and we're still going to be able to complete that journey no matter what.
Right. No, absolutely. So getting back to dating, actually, I wanted to just cut it up a little bit, but in this technology world that we live in, with dating apps, with websites, kind of covering the gamut instead of real life, real life scenarios or situations. How do you think people can find Mr. Right?
Well, the way I found it was through a mutual friend, because me and my boyfriend's mutual friend were actually contributors for the Mighty, and we connected that way. And he's like, "Hey, well, I have a friend with CP that's like your twin, and he's like, would you like to meet him?" And I thought nothing was gonna come out of it, and then something came out of it. So I would just say, don't look for it. Take your time, get to know the person, and if you can, get to know them outside the screen too,
Mhm.
because
Yeah, meeting them in person too is
yeah,
always a
like,
good thing.
you never know, they could have two different personalities outside the screen and on the screen. And like I said, just embrace the journey, but always remember, fall in love with yourself and your obstacles and your path, and you'll find somebody compatible for you.
For sure. So, what do you think has been the best compliment you've ever received?
That one's a tricky one, but I would say that the best compliment that I've ever received was that I was somebody's shiro.
Oh, that must have made you feel so good.
It did, but I was like, okay, I'm just ordinary, but thank you for giving me a superpower though.
Right. Absolutely. So I guess this feeds into my last question for you. But if you had one wish, what do you think it would be based on, even this compliment that you gave about being a superhero to
Well,
somebody?
I would say the one wish that I would give for everybody is that society understands cerebral palsy. I don't want a cure. I just want acceptance, awareness, and understanding.
It's great.
So,
Well, this was so wonderful, Tyla. You are an amazing woman and you're doing amazing things.